This lab, was a lab built on the genius of physics. Having a lot of bright people in the same place is a good idea. You can test your ideas against people who might understand them. You go where the action is, and someone was asking me where the action in science was, and so I couldn't give them one answer, such as, in 1930 you would have said, go to Copenhagen. Okay. And then if you were a theorist, and if you were an experimentalist, you would have said, go to Cambridge, when Rutherford and people, but then afterwards you would have said, go to Berkeley, and, or go to the Fermi Lab, or you go here, but people have tried to define the next big challenge and what you need to do to move beyond it. Physics, I would say, it's a bit scary here. I mean, at least, I feel the pressure on here, it must be enormous. The whole discipline depends on success here. Will anyone ever give you another city of 10,000 people without success? Fortunately, Europe moves a little slower, so I think the pressure here will be less than it would be if it was in the United States. But you don't have 100 years, and something has to come out of it. And I think you got 10 years, maybe 20. Well, I think physics, because of the division between the theory and experiments, you have a feeling that physicists actually have to think more than biologists who spend 95% of their time accumulating data. Now, it may be that here they're also spending most of the time accumulating, but at least in the past one had the impression that the key thing in physics was thinking, not doing the experiment. In the early days of molecular biology, it was simple enough that physicists could think about it. So you could talk about our results to Dick Feynman. Now you couldn't. It's just too many details. And details you can't avoid. They're there. I think it's just so complex. Physics, from the outside, it seems stuck, and it's all Higgs. Grand theory seems so explanatory that you think it has to be right, but Higgs is hard. Scientists have to be admired because they're truthful. It's always the role of the intellectual in society. And so for a while we were, tolerated by people because we were going to provide the weapons which could let us win wars. That's why physics became big. That's why you got, yes. Yeah, physics would have never become that big if physics hadn't had these, well, of course, physics, the whole semiconductor revolution and everything was solid-state physics. So physics has had enormous economic consequence, probably more recently greater economic consequence than chemistry. In my old hierarchy, physicists were better than chemists. One, they were better musicians. To be a musician, you have to have a brain. You can't play Prokofiev without a brain. So I think it's, you know, the reverence. When I was a boy, there was a reverence for brains. And now I don't sense that. The fairness is more important than brains. You know, we just haven't tackled information in the brain. So we got a completely new field will be open, but it's not open yet. We had a meeting in Cold Spring Harbor where Quick came in 1990 on the brain. And I think there was a lot more enthusiasm then that they were close to an answer than they are today. Where the limiting factor is human intelligence. How many things can you keep in your brain at the same time and juggle? Hopefully there'll be a new genius sometime. You know, it's like watching the tennis. You just hope there'll be someone, you know, a Boris Becker or something like that will suddenly appear, and it'll be different. But you know, there's never been a replacement of Francis Crick. So, and I guess you could have said, yeah, there was a replacement to Feynman, and he was Gell-Mann, and then, you know, well, who was after Gell-Mann? Well, Steve Weinberg. But who's replaced Steve? Right now, you have the feeling that he's the last one. You know, Steve used to write books. I mean, he was bigger than life. And so, you know, maybe just that there are very few brains that could be a Steve. But you could say, well, there's never ever been a replacement to Schubert. And, you know, has classical music just stopped because the brain can't be, that's about the limit. You know, Prokofiev or Shostakovich, and the limitation is just the complexity of human imagination. I don't know. As a simple way, we've been trying to find out what the strength of the cancer cell and reverse the strength. And now we're saying, well, forget about the strength, just find out what the weakness is. So we've been trying to reverse why they're strong, instead of saying they become strong and in becoming strong they're inherently weak, and let's find out the weakness. So I think we probably know how to master leukemia now, and I don't know how far we can go. But we'll know in 2 years. The drug will take a year, but a lot of people are going to make it. But you know, if this was war and you really had to, you could get the drug in people in 6 months. You would just act like, you know, it's an antibiotic. We need it for the troops on the beaches of Okinawa, and we're going to get it to the beaches of Okinawa. But we're just saying, oh, people always die of cancer. It doesn't make it. No, not the right way.